Hello everyone. A peaceful good evening to our top speaker, Mr. Ashok Nemmagaru, and good morning to Shravan sir, and good evening to all my seniors and my dear friends. Myself Nishida, pursuing first year food technology. Now, I warmly welcome you all for today's top talk. It's my pleasure to be a moderator for this session. Now, let us start the session with invocation and gratitude story. Now, I would like Kushala to tell invocation. Over to you, Kushala.
Thank you, Nishita. This is who we are. We are a team, talented, energetic, astonishing mindsets. We can do anything and everything. We talk, we care, we respect each other. We see beauty in everything. We are connected by hearts and driven by values. We celebrate each other. We provide value to each other. We take ownership in everything we do. We have freedom to make mistakes. We learn as we go. We are mad to make a difference. We love disruptive ideas. We make impossible things possible. We are strong to question the creation. We believe in dreaming big. If we do not dare to dream big, are we really living? Why be ordinary when we can be extraordinary? This is who we are.
Thank you, Kushala. Now, let us hear a gratitude story from Supraja. Over to you, Supraja.
Thank you, Nishita. I'm Praja from Top Gratitude Team. We came up with exclusive gratitude stories. Here is my gratitude story. Just we know how much we care our friends, but it is important to let them know their role in our life. This is what exactly I did. I made a gratitude card to my best friend, an accidental friendship. We were together just for a year and we moved to different schools. But still we had the same bond as others has. By God's grace, one day I found at my school and from then we are in touch. This is what I explained in our card. She is my first and best friend. As soon as she received my card, she called me and expressed her love towards me. I was surprised. She was saying exactly what I feel about her. Oh my God. Then I understood the importance of gratitude. Happy thanking.
Thank you, Supraja. It was a great story. Now, let us get into. Now, I am so fortunate to introduce our today's top speaker, Mr. Ashok Nemmagaru. Sir is presently a DAE Rajaramanna Fellow and retired outstanding scientist and Associate Director of Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited. Sir is a mechanical engineer and did masters in business administration. Has also attended summer school on nuclear law and energy from Homi Bhabha National Institute. Sir had experience in the domain of atomic energy for about 37 years, and major areas are operations of Tarapur Atomic Power Station, corporate planning, development of nuclear power program, nuclear economics, project investment analysis, and implementation of international atomic energy agencies, safeguards in Indian nuclear power plants. Sir had presented papers at national and international levels and as faculty of international atomic energy agencies delivered lectures in inter-regional training programs. Are you all excited, right? So even sir has a presentation. So over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. And a very good evening to all of you. First, I would like to thank organizers for having me here, giving me this opportunity to share about India's nuclear power program. I also extend my sincere thanks to my batchmate, Madam Meena, who has been instrumental in arranging this talk. So, let me just share my presentation first. So, this is the structure of my presentation. This is first, we will be talking only two slides, which is giving a little bit of the technology of nuclear power. Then I will take global and national perspective. Then I will talk about Indian nuclear power program, which will cover evolution of Indian nuclear power program, formation of NPCL, present status, performance, future plans. Then we talk about safety of nuclear power plants. Then, of course, the apprehensions and facts pertaining to radiation and neighborhood inclusion. So, this is the entirety of my presentation, and I hope it should take an hour. But before I get on to the this particular talk, I want to take you to some kind of developments which are taking place in energy sector world over. Right, the world is intensely involved in energy transition, to achieve the goal for limiting the greenhouse gas emissions so as to safeguard the climate change. So in 2015 at France, international community agreed to prevent the rise in global temperature beyond 1.5 degree of prehistorical era. And uh, to achieve this, all member countries committed to control the emissions and submitted their INDCs, that is, intended nationally determined contribution. India too submitted its INDC, which I will just talk little later. To achieve their target, right? All countries are putting their efforts. Some countries have drawn, some countries have drawn up a pathways for energy sector transition to reach net zero emissions by 2050. Right? The pathways in energy sector basically is directed towards transportation, buildings, mainly for heating, then industries, and the mainly it is for electricity. The reason is simple. The final consumption of entire energy, 20% is a contribution towards the electricity, and that 20% accounts for 50% of the emissions from here. So therefore, it is very essential to focus on decarbonization of electricity sector. So in this endeavor, fossil fuels based electricity production can be transmitted to low carbon and clean fuels like solar, wind, hydro, and nuclear. So with this, now let me begin my talk on global and national scenario. So before that, I will just show you. I know most of you might have had an industrial trip to a power plant. I just showing this scheme for indicating the difference between a nuclear power plant and a thermal power plant. So this part of the plant is the one which is different in case of nuclear, whereas this sector is the one which is common for both. See here it is a reactor which is containing fuel where the chain reactions, the fuel undergo fission and produce energy. That energy is in turn transferred to a coolant, which in turn drives the turbine and we create electricity. Whereas when we see that thermal power, this heat source is replaced by the boiler where we are using the fossil fuel. So this is a technological difference, and the endeavor now for the world is maybe to replace this fossil fuel by the clean energy. And the clean energy can be in the form of solar, wind, and nuclear. I will just come to the comparison of all this why a mix is needed rather than having only one kind of source for contributing to the energy. Now, coming to this perspective, globally, the nuclear power scenario, there are 444 reactors in operation world over across 31 countries. And the installed capacity is around 394 gigawatt, right? And 51 reactors across the world are under construction with a capacity of 54 gigawatt. And reactor years logged in as an experience so far is 18,977. And nuclear power generation in 2019 by nuclear power put together has been 2,796 billion units, whereas the overall electricity from all sources was 27,000 billion units, so which is around 10%. The share I will show you that of the total generation, the renewables were 10.38, nuclear was 10.35, they are very close. Then the coal was the dominant contributor even in the world. This is 36%, natural gas is next, 23%, then comes the hydro, and of course, we have oil is 3.5%. So this is the share, but for a nuclear, if we look at the country-wise, that what has been the share of nuclear in their respective countries for their total electricity supply, the France has been topping with a 70% contribution is coming from the nuclear. And of course, the gradually you can see here, Slovakia, Ukraine, Hungary and all, when we come to India, it is around 1.9% now. And it is certainly very low. And maybe when we run through the presentation, I will speak for why we are so low as of now. But then still, it is a great achievement for the country. The next, of course, this is just a detail of where all the constructions are going on. My intent of showing this was that India is having 6 reactors under construction. The details I will show later. And the highest construction is going on in China with a capacity of 12 gigawatt. And this 6th number now has gone to 8. 2 more reactors at Kudankulam, that is in Tamil Nadu, of 2000 capacity, 1000 megawatt each. They have also started this month beginning a first pour of concrete. That is a commencement of construction of the plant. So it becomes total 8 reactor units under construction with 6 gigawatt capacity. Coming to Indian electrical scene, let us see that how we are placed today. We are having 383 gigawatt, with of course the dominance is from coal, which we are seeing very clearly. More than 50% of the pie is covered by the coal here. And we have around 25% here is a renewable, which combines wind, solar, and other forms of renewable energy. Nuclear is 6780 megawatt, and this, of course, is a hydro. Here, hydro, small hydro is a part of this, and this is a large hydro, and this is gas. And during the year 2021, sorry, this is I think 2021, this generation from this capacity has been 1381 billion units. Again, the proportion wise contribution, if we look at, I just want you to have a look this number. The percentage here of renewables has been 25% of the entire capacity. Here, this is 146 billion units are coming from the renewables of the total, and this is around 10%. So this is what it is. But with this capacity base, you see, if we look at the consumption wise, per capita consumption in the country, I have got this number 1208 per kilowatt hour per capita from 1920 CA figure, right? But this number is 1/3 of the world average. Whereas the developed world, if you look at, they are quite high as compared to us. So we are 1/3. But at the contrary, we are the 3rd largest production in the world for electricity. And about 30% of our population is not having access to electricity. There are load sheddings, despite it is being said in the country that there is a excess power. But that probably is attributed to the kind of scenarios which is existing in the country for DISCOM. And but this certainly, the way we are seeing the numbers and the way we are looking at our growth in the economy, we have got growth scenario right now on hand, and we need to have more capacity base. We need to enhance this. I will just maybe refer some studies which are sort of talked in terms of that why we should be increasing this number. You see, here, before I just present this draft national energy policy prepared by Niti Aayog in 2017, what has been the kind of studies which have come out? This particular study is a bit conservative to say, but what I feel is that the electricity by middle of the century would be 6 to 7 times of the present, what we have shown here just now. It will be 6 to 7 times, and it is, the reason is very simple. There is a demographic shift from rural to urban areas, impressive growth of services, right? Then structural economic changes are taking place. So, and at present, we are finding a lot of emphasis on the manufacturing sector, wherein Make in India initiative and building infrastructure, including highways, airports, seaports, small cities, and housing for all. So, when we are having such a big shift which is going to happen, then this calls for developing a strategy for growth of electricity generation based on careful examination in issues like sustainability, particularly abundance of available energy resources. They should be sustainable. We should have diversity of sources, energy supply and technology, then security of supply and energy infrastructure. That is certainly we need to look at it. Then effect on environment, health, externalities, and demand side management. So reckon these things and look at this number of Niti Aayog. It is showing demand projection of 3678 billion units, right? And this number, they have considered the constant growth rate of around 7.4% in the business as usual scenario. This is business as usual scenario. Sorry. And similarly, when they look at the ambitious scenario, this projection is 3439. Probably they are expecting that this reduction is due to assuming technological innovations resulting in energy efficiency. And both the scenarios, the commensurate capacity also has been indicated that this has been the thing which will be sort of required. Similar. Of course, this is done by our Indian Niti Aayog, but International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) in 2016 they projected in for 2050 our installed capacity to be around 20,000 gigawatt, and per capita consumption they have indicated around 7,500 kilowatt hour against what we are having today as 1208 kilowatt hour. And rightly so, if we have to see, you see our neighboring countries like Singapore, it has got 5,000 kilowatt hour per capita consumption. Malaysia is 4,000, Thailand is 2,500, and even in our country, Goa has about 2,500 kilowatt hours, and even our all metro cities are having in this range. So, if at all, uh, this is a kind of assumption and a general prediction. If the population is growing by 2050 to 1.7 billion, and B, let us consider that three-fourths of what IIA has projected per capita consumption we take, considering 7% of T&D losses, transmission and distribution losses, then in that case, at least per capita consumption, what we should be aiming is around 5,000 kilowatt hours. So this in turn corresponding to 1.7 billion population will require something like 8,600 billion units. So this is what is going to be the scenario in our country at that point of time. And for this size of energy, I am coming to which I have talked about INDC. When you are developing this kind of electricity commitment, we have to look into the commitment which we have sort of done to INDC, wherein we have very clearly said that the 40% cumulative electric power installed capacity will be coming from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030. Of course, we are very strong on this, and I think we have already come to a very close of this, achieving this number. So renewable and nuclear, they are the key technologies for achieving the INDC objective. And why nuclear we keep talking about? When you talk about the emission levels, there are very many reports by many agencies like OECD, NEA, IEA, WNA. I am just showing you this report of IPCC. All reports have got the same trend. Numbers could be varying a bit here and there. You just look at coal. This is the gram carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour. 1 unit of electricity you generate, this is the gram, so many grams you will emit carbon dioxide. Whereas when you look at nuclear, it is only 12 grams. And wind is 11, solar is bit higher. So this is has been the trend, and that's why in the beginning when I said that we should be considering nuclear, and because it is being a baseload power, it has to be integrated with the renewables. Now with this, I will now shift to nuclear power program in the country, how it was evolved. Okay. In fact, this photograph, I know most of you might have seen. This is our Dr. Homi J. Bhabha, and he is the one veteran who thought of India's nuclear power program in 1944, and he started this program. And post independence, Atomic Energy Act, right, was promulgated in 1948, and in 1954 Department of Atomic Energy was established, and then there was a rapid growth. There was a rapid growth in this scenario up to mid 70s. You see, Apsara Research Reactor was set up in 1956. Of course, this was all happening with the international cooperation at that point of time. And then we commissioned another research reactor, Cyrus, in 1960. Then we have set up a plutonium plant. And not only that, actually, this was the period when the first commercial nuclear power reactor in the Asia was set up in our country, in Tarapur, in Maharashtra, and that was commissioned in 1969. Two units of 210 megawatts, they are boiling water reactors set up with a cooperation of GE Electric USA. Thereafter, in 1972, we commissioned the PSWR, that is pressurized high water reactors, and that unit also was in collaboration with the Canadians. But of course, in 1974, when India did peaceful nuclear explosion, there was a total halt, and the regime changed and embargo started. But yes, this implementation of the program, the three-stage program, started right from the very thought from the beginning, since the beginning of the nuclear power program. So let us see what is the three-stage program and the story further. So this is India's three-stage program. The first stage is pressurized high water reactor. And why pressurized high water reactor? Because we have got limited resources of natural uranium, and we have got abundance of thorium. So obviously, Dr. Baba, he decided a strategy that ultimately we have to explore and exploit the fuel which is available in our country in abundance. That is thorium. Even the Kerala beach sand, you will find the thorium available very readily. So first phase was to set up 10 gigawatt with, of course, this 10 gigawatt was then available uranium that time explored, that we can set up PSWR, and we can reprocess the spent fuel which is coming out from this PSWR first stage. That fuel will be used as an input in the second stage, which will be a fast breeder reactor, where thorium as such is not a fissionable material, it is a fertile material. So this will be blanketed along with the fuel in the second stage. And second stage, we have already have got a experimental reactor in second stage, that is fast breeder test reactor, which is operating at Kalpakam in Tamil Nadu, and it was commissioned in 1985. And there is another reactor of the second stage, which is a bigger size. It's a 500 megawatt prototype fast breeder reactor, and after its completion, which is actually at a very advanced stage of construction, after its completion, there are series of FBRs planned in the second stage. And when the second stage, we will, whatever output is there, we will reprocess that and get the third stage fuel, that is U-233. And again, that third stage, it will be sort of a kind of fuel which will be again blanketing thorium and generating the U-233, and this cycle, no, it gets recycled here itself, and the electricity potential in this form is used. So this is a three-stage program of the country, but of course, for accelerated growth of installed capacity to meet the requirement of the country, we have got additionality. This is nothing to do with our three-stage program. It is in addition to that, we have gone for having an international cooperation and two reactors in this series of 1000 megawatt in Kudankulam. They are operational and four more are under construction. I will come to the, when I talk about the actual scenario, give you in detail that where all what is going on. So this is nuclear power program. So this is what, when I have put this first stage with additionality, this is a part of one power sector of DAE, that is Nuclear Power Corporation, where I have been working before my retirement. And of course, so the nuclear power policy in a nutshell, if I can say that, we have got a closed fuel cycle policy, three-stage program based on reprocessing and recycling with waste management, waste minimization, self-reliance, comprehensive capabilities in all aspects of nuclear power plants and associated fuel cycles. This has been thanks to that regime what we faced in 1974, post 1974, and that has made us self-reliant. And we are today self-reliant and we are matured in terms of entire fuel cycle of nuclear power program. This is third is enhancement of nuclear power capacity to meet climate change. This is, of course, yes, this is our normal objective and mission that we would like to go ahead in increasing our capacity base in the country from the nuclear, from a PSWR, as well as supplementing it from the international cooperation. So international cooperation, when we talk about, it is basically post 2008, there has been a development. You see, in between, when we are having a limiter in terms of fuel augmentation was one of the strategy government of India has to think of supplying the fuel for operating reactors, plus the second mode when we have signed the agreement in 2008. And because of what we have developed so far, we have got this agreement so easy. And with that cooperation, now our program is that we are into kind of cooperation for setting up so many technologies, right? Like from France and maybe Westinghouse, the negotiations are all for light water reactors. And of course, there are negotiations. LWRs are in place, two reactors which are from Kudankulam, and there are four reactors now are in the construction at the same site. And fuel supply contract for imports of the fuel for reactors under IAEA safeguards. So this also a consequence of that agreement. We could get the fuel for the reactors which we have offered to IAEA safeguards. And in principle, approval of sites also have been sort of done, which I will show you those sites where these foreign reactors can be set up. For all this entire program, I thought I must share, because it is students, they must know which are the organizations, potential organizations, where they look for the jobs and otherwise. So Atomic Energy Commission is the apex body in this atomic sector. And the next is Department of Atomic Energy. And under Department of Atomic Energy, there are four major wings. One is R&D Center. So you might have heard the name of Bhabha Atomic Research Center and so on. There are some research organizations. IGCAR is one in Tamil Nadu. Then there is a Raja Ramanna Center, Variable Energy, Cyclotron. Similarly, there are public sector. So public sector, we are having Nuclear Power Corporation 1, which is in a power sector, which is dealing. Then we are having Indian Rare Earths. We have got Uranium Corporation of India Limited, Electronic Corporation of India Limited. Then we have got Bharati Navikiya Vidyut Urja. This is, you see, this is for first stage, and this is for second stage, which I told you that they are implementing prototype fast breeder reactor. Then we have got industrial organizations. These are the organizations which are meeting the requirement of the power program, which are developing a water board, nuclear fuel complex in Hyderabad, and then board of radiation and isotope technology, BRNs. Similarly, there's a service sector, and there are some aided institutions are also there. One of the major institutes is Tata Memorial Center, the cancer hospital in Mumbai, and there are many more. So there are some total 31 organizations which are working under Department of Atomic Energy, working in this field of atomic. So with this, I think I will come to the Rostec, the person who the organization which is dealing with the nuclear power program, and NPCL was formed. It is carved out from the Power Project Engineering Division of Department of Atomic Energy in 1987, became a public sector undertaking, and it is fully owned by government, 100% AAA rated, profit making company, and its asset worth is around uh, more than a lakh. Okay, it's here. And NPCL is not one company. Let me just tell you, I am saying it is a many company in one. We start from siting, design, construction, commissioning, operation, maintenance, waste management, renovation and modernization, quality assessment, and then plant life extension. So all activities are done under one umbrella. It is it is sort of specialists are there who will take care of all these activities in-house. And how this PSWR evolution has taken place. So this is a very uh, good depiction in a very brief and summarized way that I told you that REFS 1 and 2, it started pre-1974, where REFS 1 we could commission in 1972, and it was a technology demonstration phase, and the second unit came after that when it has to be totally done by indigenous means. India hand atomic energy and did a hand holding with the industries, and we could see that REPS 2 was commissioned in 1981, and we started our indigenous unit at Madras, that is Madras Atomic Power Plant. So this is 1980s, but from 1980 to 1980 second half, we did the standardization of these units and made lot of change and safety issues we upgraded here, and we sort of made made this unit as a standardized unit for the future units. And we consolidated in 90s by having Kakrapara 1 and 2 at Gujarat, 2 units. Now actually 2 more units I will come to. They are under construction. And then this was a commercialization phase where 8 units were constructed, and we upgraded our 220 megawatt fleet to 540 megawatt, and 2 units were put in Tarapur adjacent to the previous 2 units which are still in operation, boiling water reactors. And now from 540 we have upgraded to 700 megawatt, and there are 4 units are under construction, and there are future projects are also there which are under pre-construction stage. Pre-project activities are going on for those projects. So I will cover that also. So this is a total evaluation of PSWR programs. So this is an overview of a nuclear power in India. You can see this complete picture where all our plants are located. I hope you are able to see this. The total number of reactors in operation is 22 reactors, right? And the capacity is 6,780 megawatt. Okay, this includes REPS 100 megawatt, which is of course now NPCIL owns 21 reactors out of this. This is owned by Department of Atomic Energy and operated by Nuclear Power Corporation on behalf of the government. Then we are having reactor under construction. There are 11 reactors under construction. I told 2 more, actually 11 reactors. I will tell you why 11 and how. Kakrapara 3-4, 1400. RAPP 7-8, 1400. So 700 each. These are the 700 megawatt projects. So these four projects. Then we have got KKNPP, that is Kudangalam Nuclear Power Project 3 and 4, 1000 megawatt each, total 2000 and 5-6. So 4, 4, 2, 2, 4, and this is 8, and this is 2, 10. This is, in fact, in Haryana, Gorakhpur, near Delhi. These two reactors, their first pour of concrete is going to be sort of very shortly. So that's why it has been put here in the list. And this we have included PFBR also under construction, which is also in an advanced stage of construction. And KPP 3 of this 700 megawatt has been synchronized in January to the grid. And very shortly, this will be sort of commencing commercial operation. Then there is a fleet mode PSWR accorded sanctioned by government for 10 reactors. So the 10 reactors is one fleet of 7,000 megawatt. I will give you the details where all these plants are. So in total, we will have 43 reactors with a capacity of 22,480 megawatt by 2031. And there are sites, I told you, approved for future reactors. There are 5 sites for 28 reactors, 4 sites for 24 LWRs, and Bhimpur for 4 PSWRs. This is the, so I thought of showing you some feel, giving you some feel of the first boiling water reactor. 1969, this reactor is actually was 210 megawatt capacity. It started commercial operation. It was set up as a turnkey basis, but with a GE USA. Then the largest unit size in the country that time. Then demonstration of nuclear power plant in Indian grid, and of course this has been operating now also. I will show you that when we talk about key performance, we have logged more than 50 years of operation of this particular unit. And these are this PSWR Rajasthan Atomic Power Station Unit 1 and 2 set up in technical cooperation with AECL Canada. First unit 72-73 and second unit is in 1981. These are the project under construction which I was telling you. This is KPP 3 and 4. You see the plant is almost ready. One unit is anyway connected to the grid. Another unit is getting ready for connection. RAPP 7-8 also is very, very close to completion, and it is just behind by 1 or 2 years from this Kakrapara plant. Then Kudangalam 3 and 4 construction is on, and it is likely to be commissioned by 2023. And then very recently, this first pour of concrete was poured in this KKNPP 5-6 also, and these units are likely to come online by 2026 and 27. And another unit which is now under preparation, and anytime soon the first pour of concrete will be done, and this also will become a project under construction. And these are the fleet mode units which I was telling, that just to show you the locations, these 10 reactors, two reactors at one side, like that. So Chutka is one place near Jabalpur in Madhya Pradesh. It's a 2 into 700. Then Kaiga in Karnataka, already 4 units are in operation at that place. So this is an expansion of that place. Those units are 220 megawatt size. This is 700 megawatt. Now Mahi Vaswada is a new fresh site from Rajasthan. So 2 units will be set up there. And similarly, Gorakhpur, we have seen 2 units are going to start. The first pour of concrete, this another 2 units will be coming at that site. And again, Mahi Vaswada will have 4 units, in fact, out of this fleet mode. So these are the locations of the 10 reactors. The performance of our reactors, like I told you, is an excellent safety record, 50 years of operation of TAPS 1 and 2. Presently, oldest reactors in the world. Long continuous run of reactors. Kaiga 1, 962 days continuous operation. I am indicating second position because when it completed 962 days, it was number 1 in the world. But since Darlington 1 crossed 962 days, It has logged 1100 days. So now Kaiga 1 is in second position. And we have got a record of 1 year continuous operation, 37 times of units. And out of this, 4 times we have logged more than 2 years operation of RAPS 5, that is fifth unit of RAPS 765, RAPS 3, 777 days, Narora unit second, 852 days, then Kaiga 1, 962 days. So these are the performances which we have been achieving in our reactors. And when we talk about when we are operating so well, we are taking care of our safety also. And this is the impression I am just trying to share here with you that International Atomic Energy OSAT mission, they visited us and they carried out their mission, and in that they logged this open communication, enthusiasm, motivation, and sense of ownership were observed at all levels, please, during the OSAT mission. These attributes have cultivated an environment of a strong safety culture at RAPS 3 and 4. So, likewise, subsequently, they have gone to other units as well. So this has been the track. I will just talk about safety also, some more features which we are having in our plants. Then I was talking about sites which are accorded in principal approval. So these are the sites. Just see that the capacity is 6 into 1208, and this is from Kovada. The site is in Andhra Pradesh, and this is a Westinghouse. From them we are sort of having an negotiation for that. Similarly, in Gujarat, we are having a site for 6 into 1000 megawatt. This is a nominal capacity. Again, USA, another reactor. Jaitapur, EDF. We are having 6 into 1650 size, and this is actually techno-commercial discussions are in progress for this particular site. Then we have got a site in Haripur, West Bengal, and Bhimpur in Madhya Pradesh is a site for Indian PSWR. So these are the sites which I have shown you in the overall picture. Now I will just talk about safety, which we have just summarized a bit, just to give you a feel that how safe we are. We assign paramount importance to our safety aspects in our nuclear power plants, and that to take care that there is no undue exposure to the personal, public, and environment. And what is the basic principles we follow? That is redundancy, diversity, fail-safe systems, and defense in depth approach. So these are the things which are rigorously followed at the process level, system level, culture level. Safety is a moving target for us. It is ever evolving to higher levels with global experience and standards. And of course, in addition to this, over and above, we have got a robust regulatory mechanism. Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, I have shown you in the organization chart, it is directly under Atomic Energy Commission. So it is a robust body, has got full-fledged competence, and they are there to sort of for each stage of our progress, whether it is a construction, whether it is an operation, or whatever activities we keep do, they are the people who keep watching us, giving us clearances. We keep getting clearances at each and every stage for moving further. And when we talk about safety barriers in our plant, so even in case with so much of precautions, if anything happens to the fuel, okay, that is the only source of radiation, there are 5, 6 barriers for the fuel. This is the very first barrier is the fuel itself. The fuel itself is contained in a pellet. And then there is a fuel cladding which takes care of it. Then we are having a PHT system, primary heat transport system, under which this fuel is kept. That is the third barrier. Then we are having the primary containment. That is a reactor vessel. It is a containment which is inside the primary containment. That is fourth barrier. That is a primary containment. It is a reactor building. And then we have got a secondary containment outside this, and then we are having exclusion zone. So much of precautions are taken while setting up a nuclear power plant. And basically what we need for a safety of a reactor. What we need is that we need to shut down it safely. So we need to see that after shutdown also the fuel decay. So we need to remove the decay heat, and then if anything is there, we should contain the radiation. So these three aspects are well structured, well taken care in the entire setup of nuclear power plant. And of course, in the past, I know this is a common and general thing. All students talk about that three major incidents which have taken place in nuclear industry world over. That is TMI, Chernobyl, and Fukushima. And these three incidents have been only three means this is basically there are differences in setting and designs and the prevalent safety cultures, which is what is actually making us unique, and we are different, so we don't expect anything to happen. One. Number two, we have got safety evaluation. All events which is happening world over, even small or big, they are reviewed, and they are being their recommendations are put forth, and they are implemented in our all plants. And even after post Fukushima, there has been a safety review for all our nuclear power plants. And whatever recommendations were there, they are all have been implemented or incorporated in the reactors. Slightly a bit, which I hope may not be very interesting to you, but then talk about economics of nuclear power. You see why I want to cover this is basically this is a dense energy source. Why nuclear is so important. And if I look at this, if I burn 1 kg of firewood, I get only 1 unit of electricity. 1 kWh I can generate. If I generate 1 kg of coal, I get only 3 units of electricity. If I generate 1 kg of oil, I get 4 kWh. But if I burn 1 kg of natural uranium, I get 50,000 units, 50,000 kWh. You look at it, where from it comes. A single fission liberates 200 million electron volts, whereas combustion of one carbon atom gives only 12 electron volts. So the nuclear fission releases million times more energy than burning of coal. So, and see the heap, just two bundles of this size, right? They can generate 1 million unit electricity, 1 million unit, 10 to the power 6 units you can generate. But what you require is 700 tons of indigenous coal. So for 1 million unit, if suppose you have to set up a plant for 1000 megawatt, you see the amount of coal you will be transporting, which will be sort of taxing your infrastructure, rail, road, everything. And you have to carry things from one place to another place. Now, the tariffs, if I have to just say in terms of when I am talking nuclear power tariffs, this is the numbers are slightly old here. The reason being is because I was having the plant which are adjacent to these stations. If I say Tarapur 1, 2, 3, 4, these are my tariffs. But if I see Dahanu, which is very close by, the tariff is 4 rupees. Here it is maximum 2 rupees 93 paisa from PAPS 3 and 4. Similarly, if I take Rajasthan units 2 to 6, average tariff will be around 3 rupees 50 paisa. And the Kota plant, what we are having is 3 rupees 13 paisa. It's quite contemporary. Then Madras 205, 2 rupees, and Nor is 6 rupees. Then Kakrapara, it is 2 rupees 50 paisa, Okai is 4 rupees 69 paisa. So likewise, if you look at these plants, which are so the nutshell, my point is I am trying to make is the nuclear is sort of competitive. It is as good as a coal source. And the very fact that this particular study was done somewhere by me itself, and we have just worked out that what will be the tariff over the period of time in the operating life of a reactor. So when I see the coal is going and crossing after initial years, but whereas nuclear is not going that up. The reason is very simple here. You see, nuclear power plants, when you want to set up, they are capital intensive, but their operating cost is quite low. It is only 20% of the total entire tariff of the nuclear power electricity. Whereas when you look at the coal-fired plant, it may be not that uh, capital intensive for setting up a nuclear coal power plant, but the fueling charge, the operating cost for these plants is around 50 to 60%, that of the tariff. So that component keep on rising, and therefore in the long run, if you see that the nuclear power plant becomes cheaper. And now just coming to the other renewables, it is basically a comparison. I am not here to sort of make a kind of a promotion for saying only you take this technology or that technology. It is only giving some merits and demerits of each, and then trying to say that we need to have a proper energy mix of each sources so that we ultimately achieve our goal with a reduced emission of greenhouse gases. So here, if I talk about wind, solar, and nuclear, this table is very comprehensive. You see the potential available for us. This is a wind megawatt potential. 102 gigawatt is a wind potential, right? And this source of the document is from MNRE. It's a Ministry of Non Renewable Energy Sources. Okay? And yeah, sorry, Ministry of New Renewable Energy Sources. And this is solar is around 750 gigawatt, and nuclear, I have explained you three-stage program. It is used once you are reaching and exploring and exploiting third stage, it is going to go for years. Similarly, installed capacity wise, if we see today, this was actually age old. It is a old data, 1617. I can share with you now. This installed capacity number has quite gone up. Okay, these numbers have gone up. It has actually gone in the range of 42 or 46. Total wind, solar, and other renewables put together is around 95 gigawatt. Then life cycle, if you have to see, wind 25 years, solar is 20 years, and nuclear is more than 60 years. In the today's world, you can still go for your regulatory review, and then you can extend up to 80 years. Then plant load factors, very important. Just see that 20% to 30%, 32%, 18 to 25, and here 80 to 90. This is very conservatively I am putting. On an average, we are getting 80, 82%. We have actually many a times run at 90 and 95 also. Then land requirement acre per megawatt. You see, for setting up these areas, wind require around 30. This requires 6 to 7 acres, whereas what nuclear is 0.3 to 0.4. Average life cycle of the greenhouse emissions. This I think I have shown you. They are contemporary. It's slightly high. Solar is slightly high. And electricity generation, if I set up 1000 megawatt from each of these technologies, what I get? 2280, 1840, and 7000. You just see here. This is a major difference. You said the same. Now compare. Compare in what? Compare in terms of, let us say, I want to adjust my rupees crore, that capital cost per megawatt. So actual right now, at that point of time in 1617, this was 6.2 crores per megawatt, whereas solar was 7.5 crores per megawatt and nuclear was 20 crores per megawatt. But if I want to adjust and correct it for maybe commensurate energy levels and put with this availability capacity factors, this cost in fact moves up. This cost is more. So basically that has to be seen. It is 24 in case of wind, 36 in case of solar, and it is only 25 in case of nuclear. Now a bit of one characteristic of our renewables. Basically, renewables are intermittent source. We all know that whenever day night seasonal variations are very much there. If there is a sun, the solar will be available. If there is a no sun, no solar, so their intermittency is there, and because of this intermittency, system cost, right, to the grid is very high due to idling charges. Now I have shown you this one day's graph here. You see, this should have been a kind of normal demand, all India demand, and this is what has been the net demand. Why this net demand has got dipped here? Because this is the time, if you look at where solar has contributed. So when this is the period when solar is contributing, you have already got a plant which is set up, you have put it to idling, and who will pay for its cost? That's a loss. So basically, that aspect we have to see, because that plant we cannot get away with, because when the moment you reach here, when the demand is increasing, this solar and things will not be available. Again, you will find that the base load will be coming for complementing it. So this is one aspect to please keep in your mind. So when we talk about economics, we generally say we should have plant level cost is one, which we are talking in terms of generation cost, which I have shared with you. For this, then we have got a grid level cost. You see, the infrastructure is needed for transmission and distribution. And then, of course, there are some other system costs, which are in addition to. There are externalities for this other system cost. So we'll see that, go by it. There's a plant level cost. This again, the data is little old, but this is giving a good comparison. This is a hydro. It's just you have to look at the trend. This is coal and this is nuclear. And this source is CEA. This data is taken from them. Right? This is a plant level cost we can see. And this is a tariff of nuclear power station. This tariff is 1819. It was average is around 340 paisa per kilowatt hour. And I think it is hovering at the same level now also. I've got a latest data. Let me just check. Yeah, if I have to say this average tariff for 1920 was around 338. So this is average, means the total energy sold out of these plants and the revenue we have received. That is the average tariff. So this has been maximum. Minimum is Tarapur, you see, 2 rupees. The oldest plant is sold at 2 rupees, and now Kudankulam is around 4 rupees 10 paise. So these are the tariffs. This is a grid level cost, and grid level cost is basically, we don't have any data as such. I know for India, Niti Aayog has done some calculations in the past, and they have included in their economic survey, wherein they have said that probably for this renewables, the system cost is around 11 rupees per kilowatt hour. That was the number they have indicated. But this system cost was analyzed by USA and Germany, and basically by NEA 2012 figures. You just see nuclear is 1.72 and 2.42, USA and Germany. Look at the wind, it is multi-more. It's just to see the solar, the number is quite huge. It is 12 to 14 times these numbers. So this is a grid level cost, and these are the external costs which we are talking about. Basically, it is a greenhouse gases, human health, biodiversity loss, land use change, and other impacts. So this study was done by Euro. This is done by CERN, right, in 2009, and they have sort of worked out that this is how the external cost for coal. Just look at the bar, you see for yourself. Nuclear is here, wind is here, and solar is here. So they do not have much, but for other sources, it is quite huge. Similarly, this is just a data, you don't have to bother much about it. It is a ranking. One Brook and Broadshaw in 2015, they have worked out some kind of sustainability and economic environmental impact indicators, wherein he talked about greenhouse gas emissions if he considers, and all parameters, electricity cost, land use, and all. And then he has taken a rank, scale of 1 to 7. Ranking 1 is very good, and 7 is the worst. And the rank you see overall. You see, this is the rank. Where we are, nuclear is 1.3, wind is 2.3, solar is 5.3, and this is coal. So this is again one data which I am sharing world over. which they have talked about, comparing the various sources of electricity. Now, coming to the myths and this thing of radiation, nuclear radiation and health, this is something which is very, very constant companion for us. We can't get away from the radiation. You see, these are the sources. I will tell you the proportion of it, how much we get from what: cosmic rays, terrestrial, radon, then ourselves, we ourselves radiate, we have got potassium 40, then daily use items, everything radiates. Then thermal power plant, industries, basically in hospitals, your x-rays and all. What is the percentage? This is, of course, inescapable. This is the number we see. This medicine is 14%, nuclear industry is 1%, whereas natural radiation is 85%. You see, building soils 18%, cosmic is 14%, radon is 42%, and food, drink, water is 11%. So this is the exposure we get. And when we talk about nuclear industry, this is what I wanted to share with all of you. You see, world average natural background. Natural background is 2,400 unit. You consider this as a unit. 2,400 is a natural background. It anyway, inevitably, it is available all across world, right? What AERB has set a limit is 1,000 unit. What our plants are achieving. Just see, you can't even read this. This is the data of our plant. So this is how the estimates are. And just to give a little comparison, if we say that the life-threatening dose is 50% probability, and you consider this Eiffel Tower, which is 300 meters high, right? Then corresponding to the height of a man is the one which a occupational exposure is taken by the person, right? And the limit for the public is only a thickness of a brick, which is only 0.1 meter, which is here. And think of it. So it's so minimal. It's just for having a feel of it. So no adverse impact on traditional means of livelihood. What you are seeing here is agriculture, horticulture, fishing. Nothing is adversely impacted. They are all uh, closer to a plant. You are seeing in the background of a nuclear power plant here. And we certainly have inclusions. We have got schemes for healthcare, sanitation, infrastructure, education, skill development. We go around. We are committed to economic and social development of the community living around 16 kilometers radius from all our sites. So we actually very systematically we are committed to our corporate social responsibilities, and we keep contributing. And in fact, in one of the sites I visited in around to this blazes, that is in Rajasthan. I have gone once, maybe a year back before I retired. And I interacted with those individuals, and they were the people who were sort of praising for Rawat water plant, saying that, sir, they have made our life. They are the people, because of them, we have got connected to the road, we have got every facilities, and to the extent they have sold me the school. They said this is our higher secondary school, which is one of the best in the district of that place. So there is a compliments we keep getting from our neighborhood. And environment stewardship. This is in a plant site. We have habitat conservation, nurture. We nurture flora, fauna. Scientific studies are being done. Mud flats are created. Then butterfly gardens are set up in our nuclear power plant, and we issue a lot of publications pertaining to this. So these are our activities. And public awareness, yes, one of the activity which I am doing right now is a public awareness. It is a multi-purpose approach we follow. We have got a lot of structured approach in our plant, our cooperation, and we focus on a capacity building. Then we try to develop people, and we have got a partnership with the professional agencies and government agencies, and we have got a permanent exhibition centers. Three of them have been set up: one at Delhi, another at Chennai, and one at Mumbai. It's a Hall of Nuclear Power. In Chennai, you can see, or you can Mumbai, wherever at Delhi, and there is a one which is under probably they are just beginning to set up at Jaipur, and many more in line, and then even a miniature. And to a greater extent, we are actually distributing our reactor models to various uh, colleges and laboratories nearby in the all kind of places around the nuclear power plant. So to sum up, I have conclude my thing that it is a environment friendly and has huge potential. It is a safe, reliable, available 24 by 7, of course. And nuclear power is capital intensive. I already told you it is a tariff or competitive with contemporary baseload generators. Then high capacity charge, low energy fuel charge. This also I have shared with you. Energy intense fuel, less transportation and handling infrastructure, negligible external cost, tariff internalize all costs including waste management. Solar and wind are intermittent source as I have discussed with you, and cost of grid integration, storage and waste management ought to be included for comparison. Then nuclear has life of about 60 years, so we get good internal rate of return, right? And efforts certainly is continuing to reduce the cost for ongoing projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a wonderful presentation.
I hope it was a bit meaningful for you people, not bored you enough.
Yes, sir. It was amazing presentation, and we loved it.
Thank you
Thank
very
you, sir.
much.
Thank you for this presentation. Um, any thoughts or questions? It's an open session. Please raise your hand if you have anything. Yes, Triveni Akka.
Yes, thank you, sir. It's really informative presentation. We liked it. Like, and the statistic that you have shown, like energy intensity, and we really did not know about these things before. Thank you for them, sir.
Thank
Like, we
you.
used to think that it is a nuclear fuel is a fatal fuel. It's not a friendly fuel. We used to think that way, but once you showed the statistics, I got wondered. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
This was a really good presentation. Thank you very much for telling the story of nuclear energy. If you don't tell the story, we'll make up our own story, right?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes.
And I think we made up our own story, hearing whatever we heard on news and whatever, wherever we get our resources from. So we never got a story from an expert, from someone who has been in that area for, 30 years or so. So this was really good. Thank you very much for taking time and giving us your thoughts on, on nuclear energy and nuclear energy in India. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Rohitanna, go on.
Yes, thank you, Nishita. So yeah, thank you. As our team said, and we I am saying very much thankful for this topic because it's a need of the hour topic, because there's a wrong connotation in the society to some extent what nuclear energy and how it operates. So there is a lack of understanding in the safety aspects as well. So thank you for bringing up this session. And for that fact, you increased our energy by telling the truth of nuclear energy, what actually nuclear energy, and how a man can play a role with that, and the strategies comparing between renewable energies and the nuclear energy. And you see the 700, where is 700 tons and where is 27 kgs. So that's a great great achievement of a nuclear energy, I could say. So thank you very much, sir. Our energy also got increased. So yeah, NPCL, DAE, these are all boosting up. And you said India's greatness also. You included how far India is standing in the nuclear front. So yeah, it's our responsibility, and we should feel proud of our what we have achieved, and there is a lot more to achieve in the coming years. This may be a motivation for all of us to work on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rohitanna. Shivani Akka, go on.
Thank you so much, sir, for coming and talking about, like, giving a talk about this. And one thing I loved is you said that I will complete it in 1 hour, and you completed it in 1 hour. It says how much you might have prepared for giving a talk for us, or Thank you so much, sir. And
Yeah.
thank you, Meena ma'am, for connecting us with sir.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Shanika. Danisharma?
Yes, thank you so much, sir, for this. Even as Roshan mentioned, even I have some misconceptions regarding nuclear energy, but this made to understand how the journey of nuclear energy. And yes, the nuclear energy, of course, you made the remarkable that how where the 2000 kgs 20, and where the 27 kgs, and how this is building the defensive system of our India, that are how these nuclear submarines run, because we cannot carry 2000 kgs of coal in a submarine, right? And that
Yeah.
27 kg is easy to handle, and how much energy you are making with the little amount. Yeah, that is the greatest, and that made me realize how the importance of it. Yes, the yes, sir. Thank you so much.
And to add, like NPCL, we are many companies in one. So I like that statement. Thank
That's
you. Thank you for that too.
Any more final comments?
I think I was told to by Meena ma'am कि some job opportunities also I need to share. Probably I missed to talk about it. Maybe I can just share with all of you that BARC, Baba Atomic Research Center, NPC, uh, we recruit yearly basis people, graduate engineers in a training school, and for which they take their own exams. NPCI do not take its own exam now, but we are taking the gate score. So even BRC also is taking a gate score, and NPCIL is also taking a gate score. In addition to that, uh, in addition to that, there is lot of opportunity with all of you in all the branches across the industries, because all industries are working for manufacturing of nuclear components. So in fact, they are also inducting people for this field. So there are plenty of opportunities available in this setup.
So just as a point of inquiry, like recent notification Kaigi on Kaigi project by NPCL job opportunities 2 years program. Is that also
Yeah.
based on GATE score, or it's a normal
Exact.
procedure?
No, a specific thing I will not be knowing now, but it is basically it is for Kaiga. You are saying
Yeah. Right.
no. If it is coming for a site specific, most probably you have to see whether it is for graduate engineers or it is for a supervisors. Because
Like
graduate engineers, it will be coming from the headquarters only, from Mumbai, and then people will be taken in a batch, and then later on it will be sort of allocated later once the training is over.
okay, okay, sir. Thank you.
I want to say a thought, Nishita. So,
Yes, sir.
Ashok Garu, correct me if I am wrong here, uh, but one of the things I know that we look at jobs, right? Because we want to make money, we want to take care of ourselves, we want to be independent, all of that.
Right.
But the best way to be independent is to have a learning mindset. Learn, 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 and opportunities will definitely come, because every person around you is looking for people who have a learning mindset. So getting a job is actually very easy if you have a learning mindset. And of course, you have to tell your story. But if you can do it for a consistent period of time, say 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, then the jobs will come. Do you agree with that, Ashokaru?
Yeah, it is what you said is actually is the key. I will tell you, knowledge is the key for everything. If you keep enriching yourself, if you keep enriching yourself, probably you see there are no dearth of job available. People will approach you. People will approach you, and you will get plenty of jobs. So constant learning, and learning never stops. I think one should know this, It is not that graduation is over and you stop reading. We still, I see, I am retired, still I am reading. So one has to keep on learning throughout till your end. So learning is key. What you said is right. If you learn consistently, your performance will improve, your confidence level will go up. People will know that a person is in the field. Even in a person, if suppose he has got a content deficit of 10 to 15% will be accommodated by when somebody is interacting and knowing that a person has an aptitude to learn and an attitude to kind of remain committed to his area of work. So you have to develop knowledge base, you have to develop attitude for work, and you must be disciplined. These are the key things which will put you through very smoothly wherever you are.
Very, we want to also someday share. I don't know how much Meena Garu has told our story with you, but one of these days we want to share our story also with you. I
Sure,
think you will like. Go ahead.
sure.
Yeah,
I will.
I think
I
you'll
will.
like our journey, what we have done over the
Yeah,
last 4 years,
yeah,
and how we are contributing for a better India and a better world.
sure. I will love to attend that. There's no issue.
Thank you.
Like
Thank you very much.
how they evolved. So we'll also, yeah, yes, we'll also explain you how we evolved, like our story
Okay.
through our story. Just
Yeah, sure. Why not? Why not? Most welcome.
Sandhya, please go ahead with quote. Gratitude quotes.
Each day brings new opportunities, allowing you to constantly live with love. Be there for others, bring a little light into someone's day. Be grateful and live each day to the fullest. Happy thanking.
Thank you, Sandhya. Now I'll present a card. Just a note to say. Thank you, Mr. A.K. Nimma sir. We extend our profound gratitude for accepting our invitation and your willingness to give us a top talk. Your presence have added value to us. Our deep sense of gratitude for sparing your time and interacting with us. Thank you so much, sir, from Top Gratitude team.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.